Hey there, folks. I'm Matt Hansen.
And I'm John Johnson.
And you're listening to Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, the podcast where we discuss favorites we've reread, comics we want to read, and everything in between.
And here's the comic we picked this week.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of
Planes, Trains, and Comic Books.
Today, we got a callback. We're doing the part 2 of one of the earlier episodes we had. If you recall, this is from the Black History Month episode, Genius, I believe the name of the book was, John.
Genius.
And we enjoyed that one a lot, so we figured, hey, we actually noticed that we were getting a lot of downloads of that one, so we're like, hey, let's just do part 2 then. So for all of you who downloaded part 1 and enjoyed it, this one goes out to all of you. Shout out.
We really appreciate y'all taking a look at our back catalog as well. I mean, we've steadily seen those going up, so thank you to our new subscribers and our new fans that are listening in. And, if there's something you enjoy or something you want us to continue more of,
let us know.
If there's a part 2, let us know. Write us in the comments, write us an email.
Yeah, we want to cover stuff you guys like. And, while it's fun to do whatever we want as well, it's kind of like, we're just throwing this out into the void, into the into the ether, and we kind of hope you guys enjoy it. So if you do, let us know.
We know there are a gajillion podcasts out there.
Yeah.
But we appreciate you stopping and listening to ours.
Yeah, very much so. And so good on you. We really appreciate it.
Everybody's got their own brand, and we appreciate you listening to ours.
Yeah. So
Genius.
Anyway, back to Genius. So this is
Bernardin.
Yes, this is the second volume of Genius. It is called Cartel. And this takes place directly after the first one ended. And for a little catch up for those who didn't see or listen to the first episode, basically the first episode is about a girl who grew up in South Central LA, who is like this generation's Caesar or Alexander the Great.
The greatest military mind was born in South Central.
Yeah, basically she is like the next Genghis Khan or whatever, and so she has very good like tactician skills and like a mind for war. And so she actually, being born in South Central, has an issue with the LA police. And this one was from like 2013, I think. So it's a little before some of the stuff that's been going on socially recently, but it's very prescient to nowadays. So, and so she actually wages war on the LA police with the gangs from South Central because she's like the head of this gang. She kind of takes over all the gangs
and brings them all together. Yeah,
brings them all together under her head, and then she leads them to fight the LA police. And they kind of secede from LA or whatever. They're like this is our new land or whatever kind of thing. So very interesting, good story. And like we said, this takes place right afterwards because right as at the end of that one, basically she gives herself up with the caveat that all of her people go free or whatever. No one gets charged that fought with her. And basically the government comes in and they want her to work for them. They're like, they see her talent. They're like, we need her. Like, we need minds like this to, do our bidding basically around the world. Cause as we know, America is a bit of a war machine. And so they need tacticianers and, 5-star generals and stuff in the future. So they need war-minded people, and so she is that. And so this picks up right at the point where she's driving away with the Madrasa Institute lady. That is the institute that the government's using as a cover for this undercover training of these future leaders.
And she's like 17, 18 at this point. Like she's still a teenager.
Yeah, and so like John said, this is written by Mark Bernardin and Adam Friedman. Again, they did the first one. The art is different, though. The art is from Rossi Campi. I'm not sure if that's how you say your name. I apologize if I said it wrong, but it could be Rosie Campe. I'm not sure. But the art looked really good in this compared to the last one.
The first one looked very digital.
Yes, and this one had a very nice feel, like an actual artist hand did it. Not like, someone got some clip art or whatever. Just the other one just had like a more sterile feel. Not that it was terrible. It got the point across.
No. I mean, we really enjoyed the first comic too.
Yeah.
It just didn't. the story was really compelling and really good in the first one, and the art was like it was good. It was fine. We just didn't like blow us away. But the art in this one was much smoother, much like I said, much more comic feeling.
Yes, and so this one is from 2018, so it's been a couple years in between, and like we said, this one starts right as Agent Jameson, makes the deal with D. Her name's D or Destiny. We'll call her Destiny. And Destiny is the chosen one or whatever. She's like the lady. So the government makes a deal with her, and they're heading to this institute because D says, I just want my people to not go to jail or whatever, and they get immunity. So basically she goes, and she's like in a class, like a regular class with a bunch of douchebags that she doesn't fit in with. And they're all like, top of the top. It's kind of like every one of those like movies where there's like, the person that's a genius that you're following, and then they go to a class and there's the guy that thinks he's hot shit or whatever.
Yeah.
And, they're like, Parker, what do you think? And he's like, well, I think this. And then, nope, that's wrong. And then, D says like, I think this. And they're like, oh, that's right.
Yeah, obviously that's right. Yeah. Yeah. It made me think right away like the Men in Black, where it's like you have all these people go in, and then the guy from the streets comes in and he's like, oh, well, obviously I did this because of this, and they're like, oh, we need an outside of the box thinker, and that's the person I go with, and then that's exactly
actually
what this is.
That is actually a perfect example. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like I love I wish it was kind of like that, where you see the scene where he's like, well, that guy, he's just working out in the middle of the night. And, like.
That guy's got a tissue. He's got a cold.
He's got a cold or whatever. But why is she out here? She's the weird one, I thought that was, that's like perfect. But yeah, basically she's just killing it in class. And she isn't really making any friends necessarily, but she does like become friendly with a dude named Roger, who's like a tech whiz. They only meet like a couple times, but the problem is one of the things that kind of got killed from this book, just because they're like jumping around a lot and moving fast at the beginning, because they want to get to the action, is like in the first issue, pretty much they're like 18 months earlier, 2 weeks earlier, 4 months earlier, like they jump around in time a lot, and it was hard to like, you're just supposed to assume Roger meets her, and like they become friends through the time you're not seeing, kind of.
Yeah. Well, so they set it up a little bit. They want you to so in the first one, they did a really good job of setting up her having relationships with all the people around her and like earning people's trust. And that's how she goes about becoming the leader. And she's even got that tech guy who's like one of her long friends.
Yeah, she even says to Roger, like, hey, I had a tech guy. And he's like, well, where is he now? He's like, well, he's dead. It's like, that sounds about right.
Yeah. She's like, yeah. And that's one thing I feel like she says is like, everybody that's close to me
dies. Yeah.
But so like the only thing that really made it stand out in this is that they're saying like she doesn't get along with anybody really in class, except she kind of talks with Roger a bit, and they show that passage of time. And I think Jameson's like, well, we need to we'll figure out a way for her to get motivation to to
do what we want.
So like, let's make her like somehow like get close to somebody.
Yeah, because she's saying like she's in this school, but she doesn't want to be there, and she's like, I'm not gonna do your stupid missions or whatever. And even like they're doing like fake training scenarios in class, and they're like, okay, what would you do if there was hostages here and this had happened and blah blah blah. And like everybody's like, well, we could use snipers or we could run in with a SWAT team. And she's like, I would just bomb the facility. That way you have like, okay, we're not even gonna save the people anyway. So we might as well kill everybody that's there so they can't tell intel.
They probably already got information if they've been there so long, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and so like they're like, perfect, that's exactly the kind of person we want, like as the government, they want, someone who thinks just like her. And so yeah, that it was like they do that, and then there was like a weird scene that I didn't understand at first that John was telling me it was a hologram kind of thing. But they're like, we're going to go to a real scenario. And it even says like Iraq or whatever. And then, but everybody's wearing goggles and stuff. And they're, I guess it's a simulation training. So because everybody's wearing like a goggle, and they like go in to this room, and there's like the hostage situation. That's why I was like, I wasn't sure.
It was a little odd, but people that get shot there are in the next part. So like, like I said, it was weird because they all have these like very big bug-eyed glasses on, so it has to be a simulation.
And they
just
said
maybe
like
wasn't quite.
Yeah, it just didn't say like a simulation or whatever, like, so I wasn't sure what was going on. So little things like that could have been told better. It wasn't like super hard to understand. Like I just kind of said, "Oh, I guess that was a simulation" after it was done, because I'm like, well, that's the guy that got shot and he's still alive. So apparently that was a simulation. So, but basically, they're trying to find a way to break her, and they eventually do because they see that her and Roger are buddies, and they're like, okay. They actually rough Roger up a bit, and they do this thing, which kind of like we don't see as the reader until later on, but they rough Roger up one day. Then Dee sees him and goes like, "Hey, what's going on?" And he's like, "Just get away from me, all right?" He does like the Harry and the Henderson thing, like, "I don't like you anymore," or whatever. "Stop bothering me. Get out of here," or whatever. And then he goes in his room, and what we didn't see, and I'll just like reveal it, is he actually handed her like a note in his hand. And like basically it let her know that whatever's about to, like, something's going on, like she whatever's happening, be aware that something's going on, kind of thing. And it was just like a picture of a tree. But then later on that day, I think it's later that day,
yeah,
maybe
same day, I think.
Okay, same day, we see that he actually kills himself in quotation marks, and like there's a whole crime scene, and they're like, oh, he just couldn't handle it or whatever. So based on that, on him killing himself, she feels broken, and they think that they broke her. But I think she actually knows it's not real.
Yeah, I mean, she obviously has an idea that something was fishy about it. Whether she knows he's really, if he's really killed himself or not, she's not.
Yeah, and what we see is
we're not privy to. But.
She goes to like so this note was like it's like a drawing of a tree that she knew that, like, that's where they met, basically next to this tree. So she goes to the tree, finds some information, like I think it's like a tape player or a radio or something that she finds, and it tells her, like, oh, like, there's some like graffiti on a wall that's like, she can, like, it basically did like a code, and so she knew. What we find out that, like, this guy Roger found out about this like sex slave ring that he's telling her about after she thinks he's dead, kind of thing. So when she accepts the mission, she's like, I'm going to go save these girls.
Yeah.
We don't know that as the reader until a little bit later.
No, the mission that they give her is like, you're going to go in and take
Mexico.
To Mexico and take out the head of this one cartel.
Yeah, and that dude's name was Angel Guerrero, and he's like the head of the Los Zetas. And so they're like, we want you to kill this guy. And she's like, sure. And then, like, but in her mind, she's got a second mission, which is the actual mission for her. She's just going to go save these girls that are in the sex slave ring. So they go in, and I thought it was cool, like, the way that she gets close to this, like, gang or whatever is she, like, takes off her clothes except, like, her kind of undergarments. Like, she's like, who wants to punch me, out of, like, all the guys that are with her. And she's been like annoying them like the whole time, and so they're like, we want to punch you. And they like beat her up a little bit, so it looks like she's been like beaten and like left there for this cartel. And then they find her on the road, and then she like kills all of them, and like the backup comes and kills all of these guys too. So they are able to like get this truck, and then they're like, hey, there's the house that we need to go to, and she's like, no, we're not going there. Change the mission or whatever. And like she takes them to this school, and this school has like, I think it's like a drug ring too, right? Like, yeah. This town, so it's basically, this town is run and controlled by the Los Zetas, and like this school is where the sex slave ring is, and there's just tunnels all under this town where they traffic all these girls. And then like a couple other buildings are like where they keep the heroin, and like where they make the heroin. And so this is like the hometown of these people, and she just like drives the truck that they stole like into the building, like the school that they where all these girls are being held. And so
she rigs the truck.
She rigs the truck. Yeah, it blows up like with like explosives and everything. And so basically alerts everybody in the town that something's going on. Like, we don't know what's going on, but something's going on. And she finds the girls inside of the school, like underneath it.
Yeah, there's like they're going through the rubble and they kill a bunch of the other guys that like survive the explosion, and then they find them in this like there's this big like metal door down below, and the rebels are like everybody else there is like, what's this? And she knows.
She knows.
Open this door, and they open.
And she's like lying to all these guys too. She's like telling them, "Oh no, this is all part of the mission. We're gonna get Angel Guerrera, and that's why we're here." But she's actually just trying to find these girls. So they get to this door. They open it up,
and it's filled with dozens and dozens and dozens of like raggedy clothes.
Yeah.
Sex slaves.
Yeah. So women that are just drugged out, on heroin and stuff, and they're not doing well. And so at first, like basically the guys that are there are like with her are on the side of the government, obviously. So they kind of report like she's taking us on this weird like side mission or whatever. And so the government guy from the school, from Madrasa Institute, is like, hey, just kill her. She's going off on her own thing.
She's gone AWOL now, basically.
Yeah.
She just take her out. She's it's a hazard of the mission. She's a casualty.
And this guy never liked her at the school anyway. Like he just didn't like the way that she was rebellious or whatever in the school. So, she is able to, like, I guess when she opens the doors and everybody sees why she's there, she's actually able to convince the like SWAT team that's with her that like, hey, this is like something good to do, and like we'll figure out Angel later, but like what we need to do is really get them out of here. So the head of the team, the SWAT team, just goes like, hey, yeah, she's dead, we shot her, and they like let her go do her thing basically. And they leave, like the mission's been accomplished or whatever. Not that the mission's been accomplished, but they're like, I think they leave her and they say, we'll meet you at this drop point in X amount of hours. Because she's got like in her head, like I have to be here in a certain amount of time. And that's what I'm meeting someone. They don't know exactly. But they get under this, in the tunnels now. And they're like, okay, we got to get out of here. Dee's kind of leading them. The girls are really like in super bad shape because she's trying to get them like motivated to move and like do stuff.
She's like, it's gonna be okay. Like, I am here to save you guys.
Yeah, she's like, here's a gun, take this, whoever wants to, and like this is how you use it. And then like that girl blows her brains out, like she kills herself, and it's just like because she doesn't want to be alive anymore. So everybody in this sex slave ring, of course, is not having. They don't want to be there, and they don't want to be alive anymore, pretty much. And so Dee's trying to motivate them. And, as we said, the cartel is now alerted because there was like an explosion. And so the cartel is on its way, and it's like...
It moves right in. And this is really ingenious. So they move in, and they're like... They see other dead people. They're like, okay, well, I guess they got her too. They got whoever did this too.
Right.
And she like hides in the middle of... She like takes off some of her equipment that she had, and she like hides in the middle of all the girls.
Right, because they're not looking for a woman. They're looking for an Arnold Schwarzenegger motherfucker or whatever, like they're looking for the guy who killed Predator or whatever, or like a Rambo or something,
Yeah, so they start cartel starts moving the girls out of there anyway. She's like, perfect. This is kind of part of how they're gonna escape.
Yeah, and she actually gets like. In the tunnels, she like gets C4 and like blows up even more of the tunnel to like throw them off what's going on, like where they're at and everything. And so she's able to do that, and then like that basically distracts them, and they're able to like she figures out like all these girls are like high on heroin. So what we need to do, because they're like having withdrawals, is we need to like go get some heroin.
We need to get them some heroin.
Yeah, we need to get them some heroin now. Stat. All right. And so they're like, oh, the heroin is in this other building. So like they have to like get over there. So that was the explosion distracts the cartel, and they're able to get out from where they are and go to this like, it was like in a it was like in a building that they did like they're like, where the fuck is all this heroin? And they're looking around, and then there's like a box that says Christmas decorations, and like Dee's like, oh, that's where it has to be, and she pulls it off. She's like, Merry Christmas, like, so yeah, it's like, they find the heroin, they give the girls it. What did she say?
She's like no, nobody's ODing, just enough to get you like,
yeah, so you're not like throwing up or whatever.
Yeah.
And so basically, so now they're kind of like hiding out in this town, and like they're kind of trusting the villagers to like keep the lowdown for them. And Angel's goons kind of drive up, and they're like, hey, like, where is this girl or whatever? Where are these girls at? And like this fucking little kid runs out, and he tells on them. He's like,
that was crazy. Yeah, that was crazy because they were like, I guess when the drug people came through the town earlier, this was one of the things I thought was interesting because it kind of explained it a little more, and I didn't think about this because of how some of the cartels run down there.
This was like Narcos.
Yeah.
They
will go in and they will take out all local law enforcement and basically put themselves in place, but in place to where they're kind of the good guys to the people in the town because they'll bring them food and water, just enough things to let them live okay while they do their shady shit.
Yeah, and then like take little payments from them.
Yeah, like they're like, here's a little bit of money, or like, here's this, we get your girl, your daughters. Yeah. We're gonna take them someplace and rape them, unfortunately.
Yeah,
and then or they'll be like, hey, like, we'll give your boy a job, and then he like becomes a member of the
gang.
Cartel gang. Yeah, so
it really felt like I was watching Narcos or something. Like, I don't know if you've seen the show Narcos, but
I know of it. I know what it's about, but I haven't.
It really has that feel because like all these guys like Pablo Escobar and everything, they all have like, I'm just a politician, like, or I'm just one of you, my countrymen. I'm here for you guys, and he can get people on his side, and that's kind of what they showed him.
He built him up almost as like hometown hero kind of thing.
Yeah, and like he's fighting for them somehow because he keeps all the other cartels out, all the other bad stuff out, and they get to pay him protection money, and he looks good or whatever because he's keeping peace and order in this town.
So this little kid rats out where they are.
Yeah, he runs out and he's like, they're over here, they're over here.
Yeah.
It's like, motherfucker. So then there's like a big showdown, like where she has to like shoot all these people and get them out. And she keeps being like, hey, I only have this much time or whatever. And then isn't this whole time she has the radio, I think, that Roger gave her, and Roger's actually like, she finds out he's alive.
Well, she's getting like weird coordinates.
Yeah.
And things.
Someone's been texting her like on this like wristband that she has.
Yeah, and part of it also during this time, Jameson goes and finds this old retired lieutenant.
Yeah, Jameson is the cop who got her at the Madrasa Institute. So,
and she goes back to L.A. and gets the
detective from the first.
Yeah, which I was like, who's this guy? Oh, okay, I guess.
Yeah. He didn't look the same.
Yeah.
I guess because it was a different artist, but they called him Gray. So Gray was the lieutenant from the first one that like figured out that it's a woman who's like this leader of this gang and everything. So he was on top of it. So they're like figuring this out slowly as well.
Yeah, and it was weird because like, so it seemed like to the story, they weren't progression. They were just more like, they were us as the reader almost trying to figure out what was going on.
Like piecing it together.
Yeah. Like, so you could figure out like some of the people at that Madrasa Institute, her and him were
right, because they would skim over a lot of the things, like the graffiti they said it means something, or like they would show it, but they wouldn't say like what it actually meant, and then later on, this Detective Gray and Jameson would then tell each other like, oh, this is what that means, or I looked up some stuff and that's this was that. And so that's how we as the reader find out all this information about the setup for all that's happening right now. And so she's been getting all these texts from someone she doesn't know, but it's been like giving her coordinates. So she's like, okay, I got to be at this drop zone by this time at these coordinates. And she's like kind of assuming that it's either Roger or I guess maybe the head guy from the SWAT team that was with her.
Yeah.
And so I believe it's Roger that's doing it. is doing the coordinates, but the guy that's actually at the meeting with the helicopters is the squadron leader from before. And so she actually gets the girls out of there after this firefight, and is able to drop them off. And then the head guy from the squadron was like, "Hey, are you coming with us?" She's like, "No, I got some other shit to do." And so then that's when we find out that she's actually got more plans, because she basically goes and, like, the last issue of this is her, like, waging war on all the other cartels in the area. So she goes to, like, it shows her, like, going to each one and, like, picking out the guy that's, like, the head and, like, cutting their heads off and shit. And then
yeah, it's crazy. So, like, she's doing this, and the only other big part of the story is that we find out that Roger's alive. Like, Jameson's like, oh, we're figuring out where she's getting this information.
Yeah,
and she's just, like, cursing as she's, like, running through all these corridors.
Yeah,
and then they, like, open a door, and it's like, "What have you been doing, Roger?" And then Roger's like, "Oh, hey."
Yeah.
We're like, "Oh, okay, he's not dead."
Yeah. So we don't know. I don't know if Dee knew that he wasn't dead or not, but she knew that something was up when he gave her that piece of paper. So, and, like, I guess what he had given her was, like, it wasn't a radio. I guess it was that, like, wrist break. It was like a wrist messenger, like, where, like, it wasn't quite a phone. I don't know what kind of tech. It was like a wrist pager, and it would show, like, only writing on it, like text.
You know what made me think of? You know, in football they have the little thing that they look up and it plays on it and stuff. That's what kind of made me think of, but an electronic version. Like,
right,
things will come through that,
like a Palm Pilot.
Yeah, there you go.
Like a Palm Pilot that's strapped to your wrist for all those of you from the 90s.
Exactly. It's a really big Apple Watch.
Yeah, there you go.
It just brings in your text messages.
Perfect. You can only do text message on it, nothing else.
But anyway, so he's alive, and then is all the big action where she's literally every single one of these where she goes in and, like, starts killing people. I'm like, she's a one-woman wrecking machine.
Yeah, she's just cutting heads off and kicking ass and taking names, and it's kind of awesome to see a lot of it. And then now that she's done, like, as the reader, you're kind of like, what's going on? Like why is she going against these guys? You know, I'm not sure exactly what's going on. And it's kind of funny because it's almost a callback to the first trade that we read, the first story arc, because in that story arc, in order to become, like, the head of the gang, because she is a woman and she's a young woman, she had to, like basically be ruthless and brutal and cut these motherfuckers' heads off, you know? So that's what she did in that trade, in that story arc, to become the head. And then now she's basically becoming the head of a cartel.
It was crazy. Like, I like how she came into the last one too. So, like, she goes all these, and then finally she's getting to Guerrero's compound, and we're like, oh, okay. So, like, we as a reader are like, okay, she's just taking out all of the cartels in Mexico.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And this is, like, the most, like, oh, for me too. So she has a dog, like, run into the compound. They're like, hey, dog, and then, like, there's, like, these arrows that fly in with meat, and then a bunch more dogs come in. And they're like, wait a minute, and all the dogs have, like, a bomb strapped to them.
Yeah,
I was like, all the
like
dogs,
bomb dogs.
But yeah, so yeah, and all the dogs.
It gets rid of all of the guards,
yeah,
so that she can walk in there, and it's Angel, Angel Guerrero, the head of the Los Zetas cartel.
Yeah,
and she's like, hey, motherfucker. And she, like, throws this bag of heads on his feet, and she's like, let's make a deal.
Yeah. Yeah, and she's like, let's make a deal. She's like, do you want to be the most powerful man in the world? Yeah.
Yeah, and he just kind of smiles. So, like, basically, she's, like, doing what she did in L.A., but now she's just going to take over. He doesn't know it.
Yeah.
We know it because it's foreshadowing for the last comic, but, like, she's going to take over this cartel. And then she's going to, like, have this actual army of, like, people who fucking kill people and is going to do something. I don't know. And that's where it fucking ends. This was, like, the only thing that sucked about this is there's no, like, closure.
Yeah, the only little tidbit we get is, like, she sneaks back into L.A. and, like, her one true friend, I guess, in L.A. who's, you know, kind of just lived her own.
I think her name was
what was it?
Sharon or something, or Chartreuse.
Siobhan,
there you go. That's what it was. I was like, it's just something.
Yeah. Siobhan, yeah. And that was interesting because, like, yeah, Siobhan had been, like, had a kid or whatever.
Yeah, like, she just living, in South Central.
And then she gets there and she's like, hey, Destiny, you're alive or whatever.
Yeah, because everybody thinks she's dead. Because in the news, they said that Destiny killed herself. I don't know if I said that at the beginning, but when she gets taken by the Madrasa Institute, the news and the government put out this story that Destiny shot herself in custody.
Yeah.
So it was like,
of course, that's
made
what
a
they
folk
did.
hero of her kind of thing. She's the modern day Robin Hood or whatever. So
yeah.
But
I liked her going there, and she's like, "Hey, Siobhan." She's like, "Oh, Destiny," and like she's like, "Are you still with me, ride or die?" And Siobhan's like, "Ride or die."
Yeah, and they got really close, and I was like, "Are they gonna make out?"
I didn't know if they were a couple for a second.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't think she was gay, or whatever. But okay, whatever.
It's just she didn't seem like she had any kind of love interest for real in the first or this one. Yeah. So it was a little like odd place. I didn't know if I couldn't just tell if she was just really happy to see her or if there was love interest. But either way.
Well, it's kind of like me and John were talking about this before, and I was like, well, I've never I've been glad to see you, John, but never gotten that close to your mouth.
Hey man,
face to face.
We're going to the movies. Hell yeah, we're going to the movies.
Hell yeah. And then we like close in within inches of each other's noses.
It was an interesting choice for us not knowing where their chemistry's been this entire time.
Yeah.
But either way, it was still cool to be like, she's like, I'm going to drop everything in my life. We're doing whatever you need. And yeah, so like, is she going to go to war with America?
I'm thinking that. I don't know. Like I want to read volume 3 now, but unfortunately there is no volume 3 yet. So we're probably going to have to wait. Come on, Mark Bernardin. Get on it.
Just send it to us first. We'll
yeah, we'll review it. We'll pre-review it. So, but yeah, that one was like really. It was really good, but it like left you hanging really big time. Like I was just, oh man, it was just getting going.
It's a good cliffhanger.
It is a good cliffhanger, but I felt like because we had to have the school stuff, I was just kind of like, like we already know where this is. Like we already knew she was this good and this whatever. We didn't need this whole, but it's kind of, it has to set it up. Oh, another thing that I didn't really mention was every time there was a new issue, it would set up like last time on Cartel or whatever, and it would have like one page on each issue that was just like complete setup of everything we already read.
That's true. It was interesting. It was almost like exact shot panel for panel, and then an additional panel of like one extra thing that like we're learning.
Yeah,
that's going to happen.
That was the only thing that redeemed it, was that it kept growing with the story. Yeah. So if it had just done the same thing every time, I would have been like, all right, this is getting like that Wolverine. Like, how do I'm the best at what I do, and if it was that shit over and over and over, I'd be pissed. But it felt okay, and sometimes I'd be like, "Oh, that's what happened." Because sometimes, like I said, there wasn't the clearest, all the time on what happened, especially with like the time frame and what was happening and all that kind of stuff. So sometimes I'd read that and go, "Oh, okay, that clears it up."
It's like a pinpoint of exactly what.
Yes. Happened. So it was good, but it was also kind of weird because I just never had a comic do that other than like early Marvel stuff or whatever. So
last time,
the issue you just read, Cyclops or whatever. But so on that note, is there anything else you want to talk about or anything?
No, I think it summed it up. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, cool. What would you give this one, John?
It was solid read. It made me want to. It for me, it did what I want for a comic. You always go with like what's groundbreaking and what you have these kind of harder set rules. And I think going through all of this, what I've really learned is like, what is this? My big thing is, what does this comic do to make me want to keep reading the story?
Right.
Keep wanting.
And that's like the biggest thing probably of a series.
It really should be.
Yeah.
So I have to say overall, like, like literally right back in, I was like, oh, okay. I did not go back and reread or re-listen to our episode from the first one.
Yeah,
I
didn't
like,
either.
Let's just get into it. And then right away I was sucked back in. I was like, oh, this is awesome. I remember her character now. Like, let's go in. And by the end I was like, I want more. That was awesome. So I'm going to go and I'm going to give it a solid 8. Like, it was it was a great read. The art was better. There were little things here or there, but nothing that like made me be like, threw me out of the comic or made me be like, I didn't really like that. There wasn't none of that. So
yeah,
it wasn't like the best ever, but it was great. It was a solid comic and I want more. So,
okay. I'm going to give it 6.5. And I'm bringing back the halves.
Bringing the halves back.
I'm going to give it 6.5 because like you said, it was good. Like I wanted more of it and it made sense. I felt like the pacing of it was off at the beginning. Like, it starts right where you want it to, it picks up right where the first one left off, but then we're back in school.
Yeah.
And like we already had school in the last trade, you know, and like we already know that she's like this great tactician.
It was that reintroduction that a lot of movies fall into as well.
Yeah.
Like, you know the character, but let me just remind you Batman's parents were killed and this is how they were killed.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but Batman's parents were shot when he was a little kid.
Yeah.
And those pearls are always falling, right? If anyone doesn't know, pearl necklaces don't fall like that. The beads they're individually sewn on. So.
They always fall like that, but it's not the way that you know what that means. That means Thomas Wayne is a cheap
motherfucker. So like I thought I could have done without the first issue, basically. Like if you just had her like pick it up and then her like maybe one or like I know they needed to show like Roger in it to give her like a meaningful like why would she go from like I don't want to be here to I'll join your mission. They could have done something instead of that. They could have done something like show a picture of what's the friend's name again? Siobhan. Show a picture of Siobhan with her kid and be like, wouldn't it be horrible if Siobhan went to jail or something? And like, you know, like you could do something like that to just speed it up and she doesn't have to have a friend or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And then something like that. I don't know. And then you could have had the guy that's giving you the coordinates be the SWAT team commander or whatever, or like the squadron commander.
Yeah, like he obviously like someone that gained her trust because they were like, I see that she's trying to do the right thing.
Right.
Basically. So
like there was just stuff like that. I'm like, okay, you could have cleaned it up a little bit more, which was interesting because Mark Bernardin is usually spot on with story. So I don't know if maybe both of them had as much input in this one or not. I mean, it was just some of it felt a little clunky to me, but overall it was good. And once the action kicked in, I was like, yeah, this is exactly like right when she like pretends to be like a beaten girl in the path of the Jeep or whatever at the very beginning. Yeah, I'm like, I'm in it. All right, that's cool. Like that's exactly where it should be. But that was after the first issue, so I was kind of like, I don't give a fuck about Roger. I don't, you know, like whatever.
You hate setup stories. I do.
I'm not a big fan. Or there's like better ways to do it or something, you know. So I was just kind of like, why do we need to know about this school or whatever, you know? But it did go fast. I never once got bored or like had any like you know, like I was never like, oh my god, I'm falling asleep like we did last with the Teen Titans or whatever.
It sounds like you're marking it kind of low for just one issue of a 5-issue being.
I don't know. It just didn't. It didn't. It was like the sophomore slump.
I'm just trying to see if I.
It's the sophomore slump because it also was just setting up this epic story. So
that's
to me,
true.
I'm like, no, it's just a setup, and we also knew what we like when I was reading it. I knew. I'm like, okay, once she's getting the heads of these guys, it's just like the last one, and she's gonna be the head of this gang. And so the ending wasn't a twist for me. I was like, oh, I knew it. Like, you know.
Okay, well, so I'm gonna make one point about that, just because normally I'm like, oh yeah, you know, I see what you do, because a lot of movies and a lot of comics will do that. They will have an awesome beginning and it's super detailed, and the middle one it's kind of like, hey, let me remind you about some of those details, and here's kind of what's going on
and what's going to happen in the third one.
But there are some that set up, and the middle setup is really good.
Yes,
and like one of the big things I'll point out in particular is like everybody in general loves Empire Strikes Back. I think that's like the best one. Now, we don't have a finalized comic here. We don't have the full story, so we can't make that. But
this one was set up.
But this one was better than, I think, overall than the first one. A lot.
Yes, there was less setup. I don't know if it was better than the first one.
No,
I don't know. I don't know what I gave the original one that we read. So I would say I probably gave that one a 7 or an 8, just because it was so like poignant. And it's so like. It was in South Central. It was about the LA police. It was about like this movement.
You know, now I'm saying it, I'm backtracking too, because I'm like, oh, that was so fucked up that like, yeah, those things were happening in South Central, and like it was her intro story, and you're like, oh, she's badass. Whoa, she's badass.
Yeah,
like,
it's kind of like if you take Rambo 1 versus Rambo 7 or 6 or whatever the newest one was, because Rambo 1 is like him in a small town in America, and why the fuck is this chief being a dick to him? He's just trying to like get a meal at this place or whatever, you know, like, and then. You know, then he goes on his big, you know, fight or whatever, and you're like, holy shit, this escalated quick. But like, you know, that's what happens when you have like a badass, right? So she's a badass in the first one, and you know, that's what it is. Then this one's kind of like, okay, you know, we know she's a badass, and then she's taking war to bad people. So like it didn't feel as like shocking, or like if she kills cartel members, I'm like, go for it. You know, like they're cartel members. Whereas the other one, you're like, holy shit, she's killing LA cops, you know, which is like shocking. And, you know, and she's saying like, we're like, the government needs to recognize that we're seceding and all this shit. So like, these are big ideas, whereas Cartel is not as big of an idea as that, you know? And so that's...
You convinced me.
So I'm going to give it 6.5. It was great. Like, I enjoyed it. It's a great middle piece. If the third one is like, we're seceding from America or some shit, like we're taking over Texas or something, I don't know what they would do, but like, it will be interesting. We'll see what happens. But
it is, especially because this one doesn't get like, this one definitely specifically marks on like some of the things that are definitely like,
yes, they show a border wall and with Trump's name on it. And
yeah,
stuff.
And they
talk about Black Lives Matter a little bit. Yeah,
yeah,
but it's not nearly as the undercurrent as the other one was.
No, and that's why I was gonna say it will be interesting to see because of how far we're moving into things, both socially, economically, in the real world, and then.
I'm sure Mark Bernardo will bring that in.
Yeah, and where will this comic end up is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, really interesting. So I enjoyed it a lot, but I'm going to give this a 6.5. It was perfectly readable, perfectly fine, great setup, great action. It just didn't have the oomph as much as the last one did, and like that's kind of what I was expecting because it is like the first one was so social commentary and all this stuff, but yeah, are you're gonna stick with your 8 or are you gonna?
No, I'm gonna bring it down to 7.5.
Okay, 7.5.
I'm gonna use this at a 0.5 because I really did enjoy it. But
you're gonna use a 0.5 after giving me so much shit.
Going through our conversation, yeah, I was like, okay, so I'll do 7.5. But I really did enjoy it.
Well, if you guys have any comments, questions, or suggestions, you can email us at planes, trains, and comic books, all one word, at gmail.com.
Don't forget to check out our Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube channel for exclusive content. We got some great hardcover reviews on there. We got some special stuff coming up, so definitely take a look.
Yeah, and we'll see you guys next time
on the next one.
Bye. Well, folks, hope you enjoyed that episode.
If you did and you'd like to follow us on social media, our Facebook is Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, and our Instagram is @Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, all one word.
And be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more recommendations to add to your weekly pull list.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.